afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming and watching my presentation here at CoderFaire Atlanta 2013. My name is Sean Williams, and I am the Executive Vice President of a new nonprofit here in Atlanta called SEMADevelopment. And I'm here today to talk to you about a unique solution that we at SEMADevelopment feel we have found for two challenges facing both developers and nonprofits across the nation. And the way this presentation is going to go is I'm going to start off with the first challenge, the challenge a lot of you in this room might be interested in, and that is the challenge of a lot of developers working in a non-professional, team-based environment to actually get their apps to the market. I know a lot of people in this room are very interested in actually getting an app out to the market, and that's going to be the crux or sort of the focus of the challenge we're focusing on today, since we are at CoderFaire Atlanta, is how can the people in this room who have a lot of good working knowledge, technical knowledge, actually use that knowledge to get something put to the market, because that's why we're all here. And the second challenge I'm going to talk about is the challenge a lot of nonprofits are facing, which is sort of how to fill this gap. Everyone in this room, I think, is well aware of the immense benefits that mobile apps and the general web and technological revolutions have had for a lot of businesses. And what a lot of people in this room may not realize is that there's been, in large part, a lot of problems of nonprofit organizations who don't necessarily have the money to immediately invest in a lot of these technological solutions. A lot of these nonprofits have been left behind. So we're going to talk about those two challenges, and then we're going to go into a little bit about how at SEMADevelopment we feel these two challenges can actually relate directly with one another to create a very unique solution, which is going to be the next stage of our presentation, down there below the arrows. And finally, after discussing this solution in a broad theoretical context, we're going to dig right in and give you a glimpse at a case study of how we are actually putting this solution into action with our first app project called StoryTap. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at our first challenge. Alright, and our challenge is going to start by meeting a little friend. Oh no, and our little friend is very frustrated. And my question for everyone in this room is, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever gone to a hackathon, found yourself a great team, come up with a great idea, maybe even won one of the prizes at the hackathon, but for some reason or another, your idea never actually made it to the market? And to find out the answer to this question, I actually want to take a quick survey. So if we could quickly have everyone in the room raise your hand if you've ever been to a hackathon before. Oh, sorry about that. Alright, I want you to keep your hands up if you have made it to the end of the hackathon. So you actually made it through the 24 or 48 hours or somewhere in between of your hackathon, and you presented your idea at the end. Okay, wow, that's actually a lot less people than we first started with. And okay, keep your hands up if you ever met back with your group after the hackathon was over. Okay, we have a few hands still up there. And finally, how many put your app to the market after the hackathon? Okay, yeah, we actually don't have any hands left in the air. Okay, so you said, okay, you intend to get your app to the market, but you haven't done it yet. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. That's our survey, but I think in doing that, we identified a problem. And that problem is that mobile applications, programs, etc. are failing to come to fruition after initial development at hackathon events. And it doesn't actually have to be hackathon events. We're talking here about anything where you're doing a non-professional environment, team-based development design. So that could be something like a senior design project where you and a group of students are creating a project, or any sort of other development medium. Maybe it's just you and a group of friends who had a really good idea and know a little bit of code and want to get your idea to the market. So anyways, we've identified this problem, but we really want to ask ourselves why. And to ask ourselves this question, we really need to zoom in on the mobile app supply chain. And this is a very rough outline of stage by stage how an app gets built. And so we're actually going to start right here, phase 1, brainstorm. A lot of you have probably seen this before. You establish a team, you come up with some initial ideas, you pick an idea, and you do a little bit of notebook development. And what I mean by that is, you're not actually getting down to any of your hard code yet. You're simply throwing your ideas out onto a notebook, or more likely if you're with a team, a whiteboard, and trying to figure out, exactly what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Okay, and then that is going to take us to our next step here, which is stage 1 development, right? And then during this stage, we're going to have to identify necessary tools in order to actually begin to take these ideas from the notebook or from the whiteboard onto your computer. Of course, the way that we do this is through writing code, so we have to decide what are going to be the best languages to write in, what are the best platforms, am I going to use something like PhoneGap, which is another presentation here today at CoderFaire? Am I going to use something like Titanium, which is actually what we used last time? Am I going to use JavaScript or Ruby on Rails for the server-side scripting? A lot of those decisions get made, and then you actually get your hands dirty. And then before stage 2 begins, if you're at a hackathon, what you do is you get those rough stage 1 development ideas to a point where you can present them, right? You present them here in between these two areas where we have this giant arrow. And you're either presenting your ideas, to a panel at your hackathon. Maybe you're presenting it to your professor or another group of professionals after your senior design project, or, any one of those kinds of mediums, right? So at this point, a lot of your initial purpose for coming together has been achieved. You've presented at your hackathon, but in order to actually get yourself to a much larger purpose over here, launch, you have to get through this stage, the mid-level development, which I'm going to quickly go over here. So after you've kind of presented your idea, right, at the hackathon or another group of people, what you have to do is you have to meet back up together with your team. And you're going to find yourself back at the whiteboard or back at the notebook doing another phase of brainstorming. And a big question you're going to be asking yourself a lot of times at this stage is, how am I actually going to take this idea we originally had and make it more engaging, make it more marketable, make it so that somebody actually wants to buy your idea. And you're also going to have to identify the additional resources you need. And so, this could be a lot of times, maybe someone on your team who knew a particular language or had a particular skill is no longer with you, or there was something you needed to get done for the final iteration of your app that the entire time you were at the hackathon or doing your senior design, you didn't have that person, and you needed to identify who that person is and how to actually acquire them for your team. So after this second phase of brainstorming, you're going to enter into the second stage development, right? And so here you're going to do a whole new iteration of coding and fixing bugs and trying to get things out and ready for the initial launch, right? So this brings us to our final stage, launch. It's why everyone in this room is here. It's what gets excited. You upload your big idea from your head and it's finally out there on the phone. It's ready for marketing. And then, of course, something we're really not going to talk about today, but is very important, is the post-launch, which is, after that first initial launch, you look back at what all your users have found concerning bugs, what kind of updates they need, any additional marketing you need to do, etc. So, really, by looking at the supply chain, I think we've gotten a slightly deeper understanding about our problem, which is after you present your idea at a hackathon, your ideas die off. And again, why is this? Why does this happen? Well, I've identified 3 big reasons that apps don't make it. Alright, and these 3 reasons are lack of resources, lack of motivation, and lack of confidence. To go through them one by one really quick, the lack of resources I'm talking here is you don't have the time, the money, or the knowledge to actually create what you're trying to create. Your lack of motivation. I was a student at Georgia Tech, and this is a problem that Georgia Tech students seem to run into quite a bit, and I imagine a lot of college students run into these kinds of problems, and that's things are going really great. You have this great idea, you're working on it, you're coding, but then all of a sudden a physics test's come up, or all of a sudden, your finals will come up, or your midterms will come up, and those great ideas that you're really excited about aren't the most pressing issue in your life anymore, to say the least. You have to pass your classes, you have to make good grades, sort of things like that. And finally, the third big problem here is a lack of confidence. The App Store has thousands, tens of thousands of apps on it, and there's hundreds of new ones being uploaded every single day to that marketplace. And so I think it's only natural as human beings, particularly ones who are doing something not for a company, but for yourself, is, who is going to actually notice my app? Okay, and so I'm going to pause on that first challenge, right? And, we I think, did a good job of identifying the 3 keys to the problem there, but I'm going to sort of hop into a completely different challenge. It's challenge number 2, and it involves something you probably didn't necessarily expect to hear at an event like CoderFaire2013, but it's a very real challenge nonetheless, and I promise if you stay with me till the end of this presentation, you will see how it is relevant to the first challenge we presented.
27 million people around the world,
making that more slaves today than any other time in history.
13.5 million are children.
Human trafficking is the 2nd largest criminal industry and will soon surpass the drug trade.
The victims of trafficking are from any social class, any neighborhood. It can occur anytime, anywhere. More than 20,250,000 people are forced into the sex trade.
1,200,000 are children.
In the United States, an estimated 200,000 American children are sexually exploited.
Every 24 seconds, a child is trafficked.
1 out of 3 runaway teenagers are approached by a pimp within 48 hours after leaving home.
In 1996, the average age of a victim was between 16 and 17. Today, the average age is 13. What will that age be in 2020?
The youngest victim was only 6 months old.
It is estimated that there are 1,700 victims of trafficking in Kansas City. They are all around us, hidden yet visible.
What will you do?
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 Okay, so